So I want to share a simple reality with you about the workplace. The hardest worker in the room won't necessarily get the promotion, nor should they get the promotion. When you're looking to promote somebody, there's different characteristics that you need to look for to manage people compared to managing process. And that's what this video is about today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Career Compass Media. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. So you've probably been in a position or know someone who's been in a position that they were maybe jockeying for a promotion or maybe trying to get themselves to stand out, or maybe they're one of the hardest workers in the room and automatically assumed that because they put their nose to the grind and outproduced everybody, automatically they would get the next promotion opportunity that came along. And the reality is that is not how business works. When you're someone who is a leader and you're thinking about promoting someone into a supervisory role or manager role and developing them, there are certain qualities that you look for in people to make sure that they can manage people as opposed to manage processes. Hard work is very, very important. I don't want to minimize that, but the reality is most people who are jockeying for a promotion need to understand that there are people leader qualities that businesses often need to look for, and those are the ones that are generally going to be in line for promotions or put into different types of leadership roles where people are being led as opposed to processes. Now, there are a number of different checklists out there and different ways that you can try to find those qualities. I personally would recommend looking into a company like Better Culture. I actually know Brett. We've worked together on a couple of projects, and I was looking through some of his material the other day, and he's got a list out there, a checklist called the People Leader Checklist. Now, it's filled with 21 different traits of what makes a good leader, or the things that are more likely going to lead to someone who could successfully be built into a leadership role. So I'm actually not going to go through all 21 of the traits that are actually listed in the checklist. I'm actually going to point out the ones that stick out to me the most and really kind of get my thoughts going on whether or not someone is ready to be promoted into a leadership role. And for me, the first one, it happens to be on the checklist, but is also a characteristic that I look for in people that I think are promotable is, are they naturally curious? Are they intellectually curious? Do they ask really the simple question of, why do we do it this way? How did we get to this point, right? Or more importantly, how can we improve this as opposed to just accepting it for what it is and just kind of putting the nose to the grind and going over and over and over like a hamster wheel? How can we make the process more efficient? And the reality is, intellectually curious people oftentimes make great leaders because they can promote those types of conversations, those brainstorming conversations, those troubleshooting conversations, really to push for solutions. And when I think of promoting someone, I think of someone who is solution-based, not someone who is just going to point out problems, but someone who's going to offer a solution of some sort, really to move to that next level or evolve a process or evolve a procedure and find ways also to bring people in to understand why it's more important to do it this way than the old way. So first and foremost, someone who I think is promotable is someone who's naturally intellectually curious. All right, so the second thing I always look for, and it's a big red flag if it's not there, if someone can't admit that they messed something up or admit to a failure, quite honestly, it's a major red flag. And I've screened for this in a couple of different ways. In a job interview, one of the questions that I often ask is, tell me of a time when you failed at a project, something didn't go the way you thought it should go, and essentially it didn't work out. And then I asked the clarifiers of what was essentially the result of that situation, and most importantly, what did you learn from it? And I actually still vividly remember this when I was doing an interview for an HR business partner actually at a hospital. And I asked that question. I'm like, tell me a time when you failed and give me some details and what did you learn from it? Because really what I was trying to see is, were they naturally curious? Were they intellectually curious? Like I said, that's a very important thing. But more importantly, I want to know, how well do they own situations and move past them and problem solve? And he looked me directly in the eye and said, I have never failed at anything in my life. And, I was professional enough. I didn't stop the interview immediately, but in the back of my mind, the alarm bells were going off because, quite honestly, everybody makes mistakes. You have to be able to own your mistakes. And more importantly, you have to be able to learn from your mistakes. We're human. And if you can't acknowledge that you made a mistake, how are you going to lead a bunch of other people that you know are also potentially going to make mistakes? How are you going to build them back up if you can't even admit it to yourself? So really, they have to admit to their mistakes, be able to ask for help, ask for guidance. It's also a clear sign that they're willing to kind of step back a little bit and learn from a scenario. But one big red flag for me, if someone can't admit when they're wrong, they are probably not going to be someone that I would ever think about promoting into a higher level position. Another thing that I always look for is really accountability. Do they hold themselves to a high standard, but also the people around them to a high standard? And this is actually in the checklist in a couple of different spots, both for self, or do you hold yourself to a high standard, but then also other people to a high standard as well. And so really, in my mind, I see that as accountability. It's easy to follow the rules and say all the right things when a lot of people are watching. I'm more interested in what happens when nobody's watching. Are you still going through the steps? Are you showing true integrity when nobody is there and taking accountability and making sure that you're holding yourself to a high standard when no one's watching? That to me is something that you can actually look for when you start digging through project details, when you start digging into relationships with peers and other coworkers, is how do they act when really the bigwigs are not in the room? That is something that is a huge, huge indicator that if someone's willing to do all the steps and do all the right things when no one is looking, more than likely they're going to do a very good job, or be more likely to do a very good job when you promote them into a position, because they're going to take pride in what they do and they're going to hold the people around them to a higher standard. So the next thing I look for, and one thing I love doing, in the HR world, we have something called 360 assessments. And it's great to have a supervisor assess someone and see that direct feedback, but kind of like with my last expectation on integrity and accountability, you want to know how they act with their peers. Is this person someone that their peers go to for help? When their peers evaluate them, do they come off as genuine? Do they have respect for them? Now keep in mind, respect is different than like. I don't necessarily need someone to be super likable to promote them, but I do expect them to be respected by their peers, because it's different. And what I mean by that is, if someone knows something is wrong and they step up and maybe step on someone's toes because they know it's the right thing to do, stop an unsafe situation, or maybe call a client and say, hey, we messed this up, it is on us. Maybe that made somebody else look bad, but the reality is it was the right thing to do. People respect that. They may not like it. They may have caused extra work, or maybe some egg on the face, or those types of things. But the reality is, if someone's willing to do the right thing, more than likely that shows, and their peers respect them. So again, it's more about respect in my mind than it is, are they likable? And really, for me, the last thing that I look for, I'm a big fan of humility. If I want someone to be a leader for me, I want them to know that more than likely you're going to take more of the blame than you probably should, and you're going to get a lot less of the public credit than you should. You've got to be willing, in my mind, again, a promotable feature, someone who I would look at as saying, this person more than likely is someone who would make a good leader, is when good ideas are brought up by the team, they don't take the credit. They make sure that teammate or that team member or that peer, whoever, gets credit for that success. And then when things don't go wrong, they also know they're the leader. Ultimately, everything is coming back to them. They're accountable for everything. So another way to put it is, the team's successes are the team's failures are mine. And if they have that type of a thought process, I see them as someone who is going to be highly promotable. Now again, I highly recommend that you take a look at the entire checklist that I referenced here. And in full disclaimer, I don't get anything for promoting this particular checklist. I just think it's a really good checklist. If you've never checked out Better Culture, check out their website, check out their podcast. There's tons of really, really excellent information on how to build good culture, how to build people, and really that's what this particular video is about. It's knowing the difference between people management versus process management. If you want to be promoted to a people manager, you have to understand the difference, because the skill sets to manage people are totally different from the skill sets needed to manage process. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the content. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you here next time on the channel. Take care.